Bullies stole his Valentine's gift. He humiliated them in front of her. Bullies stole his Valentine's gift. He humiliated them in front of her. Tyler Brennan kept his head down as he walked through the main entrance of Riverside Valley High on a grey Monday morning in late January. The cold air followed him inside, mixing with the familiar smell of floor cleaner and teenage sweat. He wore the same faded blue jacket he'd worn every day since transferring here 3 months ago, the one that hung a little too loose on his thin frame. His dark hair fell across his forehead, and he made sure it stayed that way, a curtain between him and the world. The hallways were already crowded, lockers slamming, voices bouncing off tile floors and cinder block walls. Tyler navigated through the chaos like a ghost, touching nothing, meeting no one's eyes. He'd learned quickly how to be invisible here. After moving from a small town in Montana following his mother's job relocation, Tyler had hoped Riverside Valley would be a fresh start. Instead, it had become a daily exercise in survival. The school itself was massive compared to what he'd known before. A sprawling complex of brick buildings connected by covered walkways, home to over 2,000 students. There was the main academic building where he spent most of his time, the separate gymnasium that smelled perpetually of rubber and determination, the cafeteria that could seat 500 but always felt claustrophobic, the library tucked away in the east wing where he sometimes hid during lunch, the vast parking lot where the hierarchy of the school was displayed in carefully parked trucks and sports cars, the football field and track where autumn victories were still celebrated in winter conversations, and the industrial arts building where the smell of sawdust and metal reminded him of home. Tyler's locker was in the sophomore hallway, tucked near the water fountain that never worked properly. He spun the combination lock with practiced efficiency, keeping his peripheral vision active. That's when he heard them. The voices carried that particular tone, the one that made his stomach clench even before he identified the words. Well, well. Morning, Brennan. Brett Holloway's voice was smooth, confident, the kind of voice that had never known real fear. Tyler didn't turn around. He focused on the inside of his locker, on the neat stack of textbooks, the photo of his late father in uniform tucked to the back where no one could see it. Brett was the kind of person who seemed designed for high school royalty. Tall, athletic, with the easy smile of someone who'd never had a door closed in his face. He was the starting quarterback, the homecoming prince, the boy whose father owned 3 car dealerships across the county. His kingdom included 4 loyal subjects who orbited him constantly. There was Cody Marsh, thick-necked and quick to laugh at Brett's jokes, a defensive lineman who treated other humans like obstacles to be moved. Trent Sawyer, wiry and mean, with quick hands and quicker insults, the kind who'd trip you in the hallway and act surprised when you fell. Derek Pullman, quiet but always present, his silence somehow more threatening than the others' noise. And Ashley Quinn, the only girl in their group, sharp-tongued and sharper-eyed, who seemed to enjoy cruelty in a different way than the boys, more psychological, more precise. "I'm talking to you, man." Brett's hand appeared on the locker next to Tyler's head, slamming it shut. Tyler flinched despite himself, despite the promises he'd made to stay calm, to not give them the satisfaction. He turned slowly. Brett stood close enough that Tyler could smell his cologne, something expensive that probably cost more than Tyler's entire wardrobe. The others flanked him, a practiced formation they'd perfected over countless similar encounters. "Sorry," Tyler said quietly. "Didn't hear you." "Didn't hear me," Brett repeated, mockery dripping from each syllable. "That's your problem, Brennan. You never hear anything. Never see anything, just float through here like you're made of smoke." He smiled, but there was nothing warm in it. "Makes a person wonder what you're hiding." Tyler's jaw tightened. He forced his hands to stay relaxed at his sides, even though every instinct screamed at him to defend himself, to show them what he was really capable of. But he'd promised his mother. After his father died 2 years ago, after the funeral and the move and the therapy sessions she could barely afford, he'd promised her he wouldn't fight, wouldn't use what his father had taught him, wouldn't become the kind of person who solved problems with violence. "I'm not hiding anything," Tyler said. "Sure you're not." Ashley stepped forward, looking Tyler up and down with theatrical disgust. "That jacket, though. Someone needs to tell you the 90s called. They want their fashion sense back." Cody laughed too loud at that, the kind of laugh that was more about showing allegiance than actual humor. Students passing by glanced over, but no one stopped. They never did. Mr. Hendricks, the history teacher, walked past with his coffee, saw the confrontation, and kept walking. That was how it worked here. The social ecosystem had its predators and its prey, and the adults had learned long ago not to disturb the natural order unless absolutely necessary. "First period's about to start," Tyler said, trying to step around them. Trent moved to block him, casual but deliberate. "What's the rush? You got somewhere important to be? Someone important to see?" His grin widened. "Oh, wait. That's right. Nobody even knows you exist." It wasn't true. Not entirely. There was one person who'd noticed him, who'd smiled at him twice in the library, who'd asked to borrow his notes in chemistry class. Her name was Emma Castellano, and she was the reason Tyler had started caring about how he looked in the mornings, the reason he'd stopped skipping lunch completely. She had long, dark hair and wore vintage band t-shirts and had a laugh that sounded like music. She sat 3 rows ahead of him in chemistry, 2 seats to the left, and sometimes when she twisted around to look at the periodic table on the back wall, her eyes would pass over him. And once, just once, she'd smiled. But he couldn't think about Emma now, not with Brett's crew surrounding him. Not with the hallway audience pretending not to watch. "Let me through," Tyler said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline beginning to pump through his veins. "Let me through," Derek mimicked in a high-pitched whine, and the others laughed. Brett leaned in closer. "Here's the thing, Brennan. This is our school, has been since freshman year. And when someone new shows up, when someone like you shows up, we like to make sure they understand how things work. You understand how things work yet?" Tyler understood perfectly. He'd understood since his second day here when Cody had knocked his lunch tray out of his hands in the cafeteria. He'd understood when Trent had shoulder-checked him into a locker hard enough to leave a bruise. He'd understood when Ashley had started a rumor that he had lice, forcing him to endure a week of even more isolation than usual. He'd understood every time Brett had made some comment in the locker room about Tyler's scrawny build, every time they'd excluded him from group projects in classes they shared, every time they'd made him the punchline of jokes he wasn't present to hear, but somehow always got back to him. "I understand," Tyler said quietly. "Good." Brett patted Tyler's shoulder, a gesture that looked friendly to any passing teacher, but carried an edge of ownership that made Tyler's skin crawl. "Then we're all good here." "Right, guys." They dispersed as quickly as they'd gathered, flowing back into the hallway traffic like sharks disappearing into deep water. Tyler stood there for a moment, his heart still racing, his hands trembling slightly. He took a deep breath, grabbed his books, and headed to first period. The day proceeded in its usual rhythm. In English class, Mrs. Patterson discussed symbolism in Of Mice and Men, while Tyler took meticulous notes he'd probably never look at again. In chemistry, he sat behind Emma Castellano and tried not to stare at the way the fluorescent lights caught the red highlights in her dark hair. She was talking to her friend Rachel about some band playing at the community center next weekend. Tyler wished he had the courage to say something, anything, but the words never made it past the barrier of his self-imposed silence. At lunch, Tyler faced the daily decision: cafeteria or library. The cafeteria meant food, but also meant navigating the social minefield of where to sit. Most days, he ate quickly at the edge of a table populated by other loners, each person islands unto themselves. The library meant safety, but also meant going hungry unless he'd remembered to pack something, which he usually didn't. Today, he chose the cafeteria. His mother had been working double shifts at the hospital, and he knew she needed him to eat properly, to not give her more things to worry about. He grabbed a tray, let the lunch lady pile on something that might have been meatloaf, and grabbed an apple that had seen better days. Then came the walk through the gauntlet, scanning for an empty seat, trying not to look desperate. Brett's table was in the center of the cafeteria, naturally, the prime real estate, surrounded by the other athletes and popular kids. Tyler gave it a wide berth, aiming for the far corner where a few kids from the robotics club usually sat. But as he passed the table where the yearbook committee worked on layouts, his foot caught on something that definitely hadn't been there a moment before, and suddenly Tyler was falling, watching in slow motion as his tray tilted, as the meatloaf achieved flight, as he crashed to the ground in a tangle of limbs and spilled food. The cafeteria didn't go silent. That would have been too dramatic, too movie-like. Instead, there was a ripple of laughter. Conversations pausing just long enough for people to look, to register what happened, to file it away as just another moment in the daily theater of high school cruelty. Tyler lay there for a heartbeat, gravy soaking into his jeans, the industrial carpet rough against his palms. He looked back and saw Trent's foot already withdrawn, the picture of innocence. "Whoa, dude! You okay?" Trent's voice was all concern, the kind that would sound genuine to any adult who might be listening. "You should really watch where you're going." Tyler pushed himself up, his cheeks burning. Several students were openly staring now. He thought he saw Emma across the cafeteria, her expression one of sympathy, but he couldn't be sure. Didn't want to look directly, didn't want her to see him like this, covered in institutional food and humiliation. He left his tray where it fell, walked out of the cafeteria with his head up, but his insides churning. Behind him, he heard Cody's booming laugh, heard someone say, "Classic," heard the general hum of cafeteria life resume as if nothing had happened, because to them, nothing had. This was just the natural order of things. In the bathroom, Tyler cleaned himself off as best he could. The gravy stain on his jeans was going to last the rest of the day. He stared at himself in the mirror, at the face he barely recognized anymore. When his father was alive, Tyler had been different, confident, happy. His dad had been Air Force, special operations, the kind of soldier who didn't talk much about what he did, but carried himself with unshakable calm. Starting when Tyler was young, his father had taught him things. How to fall without getting hurt, how to read a room in seconds, how to turn an opponent's strength against them, how to stay centered when everything around you was chaos. They'd practiced in the garage back in Montana, his father patient and methodical, teaching Tyler that real martial skill wasn't about aggression, but about control, about understanding your body and mind so completely that fear couldn't find purchase. Then came the training accident, the helicopter crash in some desert whose name Tyler still couldn't pronounce, the funeral with full military honors that felt like a fever dream, his mother's decision to move closer to her sister in California, to start over somewhere new, and Tyler's promise, made in tears the night before they left Montana, that he wouldn't fight, wouldn't get in trouble, wouldn't make his mother's life harder than it already was. So he endured. He let Brett and his crew treat him like a verbal punching bag. He absorbed the daily humiliations like a sponge, soaking up water, holding it all inside, feeling the weight grow heavier, but never allowing it to spill out. The afternoon passed in a blur. In history, Mr. Hendricks lectured about the Cold War, while Tyler's damp jeans slowly dried into stiff discomfort. In PE, Coach Robertson made them run laps, and Tyler found himself lapping several students, including Cody, whose linebacker build wasn't designed for endurance. As Tyler passed him, Cody muttered something about showing off. But Tyler kept his pace, kept his breathing steady, let the rhythm of running clear his mind the way his father had taught him. The final bell rang at 3:15. Students flooded the hallways, a tide of relief and noise rushing toward freedom. Tyler stopped at his locker, exchanged books for homework, and was about to leave when he saw Emma Castellano standing near the water fountain. She was alone for once, Rachel apparently already gone. She was looking at her phone, her dark hair falling forward as she scrolled through whatever held her attention. Tyler's heart kicked up. This was it. This was the moment. He could just walk over, say hi, start a conversation about chemistry or music or the weather or literally anything. His father's voice echoed in his memory. Fear is just information, Tyler. It tells you what matters, but you don't have to let it make your decisions. He took a step forward. Then Brett appeared, as if summoned by Tyler's moment of hope. He materialized at Emma's side with the casual confidence of someone who'd never been rejected, whose presence was always welcome. "Em," Brett said, and the casual intimacy of the nickname made Tyler's stomach clench. "You coming to practice? Thought you were shooting photos for the sports section?" Emma looked up, and her smile was warm, but not quite reaching her eyes. "Yeah, I'll be there. Just needed to grab something from my locker." "Cool, cool." Brett leaned against the wall, all easy charm. "Hey, so Valentine's Day is coming up. You got plans?" Tyler should have walked away, should have made himself invisible again. But he couldn't move, couldn't stop watching, couldn't stop hoping that Emma would shut Brett down, would tell him she wasn't interested. Instead, she shrugged. "I don't know. Probably just hanging out with Rachel." "That's a waste," Brett said. "Pretty girl like you should have someone taking her someplace nice." Emma's smile became slightly strained, the kind of expression that suggested this wasn't the first time they'd had this conversation. "Brett, we've talked about this." I know. Just friends." He raised his hands in mock surrender. "Can't blame a guy for trying though, right?" That's when Brett noticed Tyler standing there, frozen like an idiot, staring at them. Brett's expression shifted, something dangerous flickering behind his friendly mask. "Brennan," Brett said, his voice carrying that edge again. "Something you need? Or are you just lurking?" Emma turned, saw Tyler, and for a moment, just a moment, her expression softened. "Hi, Tyler." She knew his name. She'd said his name. Tyler's mouth opened, but before he could form words, Brett stepped forward, positioning himself between Tyler and Emma. "Private conversation, man. Move along." Tyler's hands clenched into fists at his sides, an involuntary reaction his body made before his mind caught up. Brett saw it, and his smile widened, predatory and pleased. "What's that? You got something to say?" Brett took a step closer, voice lowering so Emma wouldn't hear. "You think you got a shot with her? That it? You think someone like Emma would even look at someone like you?" The words landed like physical blows. Tyler forced himself to unclench his fists, forced his breathing to stay even, forced the rising tide of anger back down where it belonged. "No," Tyler said quietly. "Sorry, I'm leaving." He walked away, his face burning, aware that Emma was watching, aware that Brett was probably smirking, aware that he'd just confirmed every weak, pathetic thing they believed about him. Behind him, he heard Emma say something to Brett, her tone sharp, but he didn't stop to listen. He just kept walking, out of the building, into the parking lot, toward the bus stop where he'd wait for the number 47 that would take him home. That evening, Tyler sat at the small kitchen table in their apartment and tried to focus on homework. The apartment was a far cry from their house in Montana. 2 bedrooms, thin walls, a view of the parking lot from the living room window. His mother wouldn't be home until after midnight. She'd left a note on the fridge saying there was leftover pasta in the Tupperware and reminding him to lock the door. The note was written on hospital stationery, her handwriting rushed, but still carrying that careful precision that defined everything she did. Tyler heated the pasta, ate it without tasting it, and then sat at the table with his chemistry textbook open but unread. His mind kept circling back to the hallway, to Emma's voice saying his name, to Brett's words echoing in his skull. "You think someone like Emma would even look at someone like you?" He knew what his father would say. His father would tell him that other people's opinions were just noise, that the only validation that mattered came from within. But his father had been strong, respected, secure in who he was. Tyler was just trying to survive. The apartment was too quiet. Tyler got up, went to his room, and opened his closet. In the back, hidden behind old coats and boxes, was his father's training bag. Tyler hadn't opened it since the move. He pulled it out now, unzipped it slowly. Inside were the worn gloves his father had used, the hand wraps, the training pads marked with years of impact. Beneath those were notebooks, dozens of them filled with his father's precise handwriting. Training regimens, technique descriptions, philosophical thoughts about discipline and control. Tyler pulled out one of the notebooks at random, flipped it open. The date at the top was from 6 years ago. The entry described a technique for defending against a wrist grab, complete with detailed diagrams. His father's handwriting was like hearing his voice again, calm and instructional. The key is not to resist the force, but to redirect it. Use the attacker's momentum against them. Stay centered. Stay calm. The moment you react with anger, you've already lost. Tyler closed the notebook carefully, placed it back in the bag. He wasn't ready. He'd made a promise. He'd stay invisible, stay safe, keep his head down until graduation. Only 2 more years. He could do this. The next few weeks established a brutal routine. Brett and his crew seemed to take Tyler's silence as permission to escalate. In the locker room after PE, Tyler's clothes would go missing, forcing him to frantically search until he found them stuffed in the toilet or thrown in the shower. In the hallways between classes, Trent would slam into him, books flying, apologies dripping with sarcasm. In the cafeteria, Derek would sit in whatever seat Tyler approached, forcing him to keep moving, keep searching, a public display of his complete lack of social standing. Ashley's attacks were more subtle. She'd spread rumors in that careful way that meant they couldn't be traced back to her. Tyler was poor. Tyler had gotten kicked out of his last school. Tyler had been in juvie. None of it was true, but truth didn't matter in the ecosystem of high school gossip. What mattered was the story, the narrative, and Ashley was an expert storyteller. Through it all, Tyler remained silent. He took it. He absorbed it. He came home each evening to an empty apartment and sat with his father's notebooks, reading them like scripture, trying to find wisdom in the carefully documented techniques and philosophies. His mother noticed something was wrong. She'd ask him over their rare shared breakfasts how school was going, and he'd lie with a smile, say everything was fine. Watch the worry lines around her eyes deepen anyway. In early February, the school announced the annual Valentine's Day dance. It would be held in the gymnasium, tickets were $15, and the student council was already decorating the main hallway with paper hearts and crepe paper streamers in shades of pink and red. Tyler watched the preparations with detached interest, knowing he wouldn't attend, knowing dances were for people who belonged, who had someone to dance with, who fit into the world in ways he never would. But then, something changed. It was a Thursday in chemistry class. They were working on a lab assignment about reaction rates, partnered randomly by Mrs. Chen. By some miracle of alphabetical proximity, Tyler found himself paired with Emma Castellano. She slid onto the stool next to him at the lab bench, her notebook already open, her dark eyes focused on the instructions. "Hey," she said simply. "Hey," Tyler managed. They worked in silence for a few minutes, measuring solutions, recording observations. Tyler was hyper-aware of her presence, the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating, the silver bracelet on her wrist that caught the light. Then she spoke without looking up from her notes. You know Brett's an asshole, right? Tyler nearly dropped the beaker he was holding. What? Brett, that day in the hallway. Now she did look at him and her expression was serious. He shouldn't have talked to you like that. I told him so after you left. Tyler didn't know what to say. This was more words than Emma had ever directed at him, more attention than he dared hope for. It's okay, he said finally. It's not, though. She tilted her head, studying him. Why do you let them do that? Treat you like that? The question was asked without judgment, genuine curiosity in her voice. Tyler focused on writing down the temperature of their solution, buying time to formulate an answer. Easier than fighting back, he said quietly. Is it? She was still watching him. Looks pretty hard from where I'm sitting. Mrs. Chen called for attention, explaining the next step in the experiment. Tyler and Emma finished the lab in silence, but it felt different now, charged with something unspoken. As the bell rang and students began packing up, Emma wrote something on a piece of paper, folded it, and slid it across the table to Tyler. See you tomorrow, she said, then left before he could respond. Tyler waited until he was alone at his locker to unfold the paper. In neat handwriting it said, "You're smarter than they are." Don't forget that. Below that was her phone number. That night, Tyler lay in bed staring at the piece of paper like it was a treasure map. Emma Castellano had given him her phone number, had noticed he was smart, had called Brett an asshole on his behalf. It felt like a crack in the wall he'd built around himself, a sliver of light penetrating darkness. He didn't text her that night, unsure of what to say, but he kept the paper in his pocket, a talisman against the daily grind of humiliation. The next day, Friday, started like any other. Morning fog hanging over the parking lot, students streaming into the building, the usual chaos of hallway traffic. Tyler was at his locker, actually smiling slightly as he remembered Emma's note when the blow came. Something hard slammed into his shoulder from behind, spinning him partially around. His books tumbled to the floor. He turned to see Cody looming over him, Brett and the others flanking him. "Whoa, sorry, man," Cody said, not sorry at all. "Didn't see you there. You're so small, you know. Just blend right into the lockers." Tyler bent to pick up his books. Brett's foot came down on his chemistry textbook, pinning it to the floor. "Heard you were lab partners with Emma yesterday," Brett said conversationally. "Heard you two were getting real cozy." Tyler's stomach dropped. Of course, word had spread. In a school this size, nothing stayed private. "We were just doing the assignment," Tyler said. "Just doing the assignment," Ashley repeated mockingly. She was examining her nails, not looking at Tyler. "That's so cute. He thinks Emma actually wanted to talk to him." "She was being nice," Trent added. "That's what Emma does. She's nice to everyone, even strays." Brett crouched down so he was eye level with Tyler, who was still half bent over his books. "Let me make something real clear, Brennan. Emma is off limits. You don't talk to her, you don't look at her, you definitely don't get any ideas about her, understand?" Tyler met Brett's eyes, and for a moment, just a moment, he let Brett see something real beneath the surface. Something that made Brett's confident smile flicker. "She can talk to whoever she wants," Tyler said quietly. "That's her choice." The hallway around them had gone quiet. Students were watching now, sensing something different in the air. Brett stood up slowly, his jaw tight. "You got a spine after all," Brett said. "Interesting." He stepped back, gestured to his crew. "Come on, we're done here." They left, but the look Brett gave Tyler over his shoulder promised this wasn't over. Tyler gathered his books with shaking hands, aware of the eyes on him, aware that he'd just crossed a line he couldn't uncross. In chemistry that day, Emma smiled at him from her seat, 3 rows ahead. At lunch, he found a note tucked into his locker. "Want to study for the midterm together? Library after school?" It was unsigned, but he recognized Emma's handwriting. Tyler went to the library after school, his heart hammering. Emma was already there, sitting at a corner table with chemistry notes spread before her. She looked up when he approached, smiled, gestured to the empty chair across from her. "Hey," she said, "glad you came." They studied for an hour, going over reaction equations and atomic structures. Emma was smart, sharp, asking questions that made Tyler think harder about the material. They fell into an easy rhythm, trading answers, correcting each other, occasionally laughing at Mrs. Chen's terrible puns from class. Tyler felt something he hadn't felt in months. Normal. Like he was just a person talking to another person. No masks, no fear, no constant vigilance. When the library's closing announcement came over the intercom, Emma started packing her things. "Same time Monday?" she asked. "Yeah," Tyler said. "That would be great." "Cool." She hesitated, then, "Tyler, about what Brett said in the hallway. You know that's garbage, right? He doesn't get to decide who I talk to." "I know," Tyler said, though part of him still couldn't quite believe it. "Good." She slung her backpack over one shoulder. "See you Monday." Tyler left the library floating. The February evening was cold, the sun already setting, but he didn't care. Emma wanted to study with him. Emma had sought him out. Maybe, just maybe, things were starting to change. That weekend, Tyler did something he hadn't done in months. He went to the garage of their apartment complex, found an empty section away from the parked cars, and started running through the forms his father had taught him. Basic movements at first, just to see if his body remembered. Step, pivot, block, strike. The motions felt foreign after so long away, but they also felt like coming home. His father's voice echoed in his memory. "Smooth is fast. Fast is smooth. Don't rush. Feel each movement." Tyler worked through the forms until his shirt was soaked with sweat, until his muscles burned, until his mind was clear and quiet. He didn't know what he was preparing for, but something was shifting inside him. The wall he'd built between who he was and who he'd been forced to become was starting to crack. On Monday, Emma met him in the library again. They studied, talked about classes, discovered a shared love of old science fiction movies. Emma told him about her photography, showed him shots she'd taken of the football team that somehow made the brutal sport look balletic and beautiful. Tyler told her about Montana, about the mountains and the space, and how different it was from here. He didn't mention his father. That wound was still too raw. They fell into a routine over the next week, library sessions after school, passing notes in chemistry. Emma sitting with Tyler at lunch once, just once, but it was enough to make him feel visible. He noticed her more completely now, the way she dressed in layers, vintage t-shirts and flannel, ripped jeans and combat boots that shouldn't have looked good together but did. The way she laughed with her whole body when something truly funny happened. The way she looked at the world through the camera on her phone, always searching for the perfect angle, the perfect light. Brett noticed too. The attention Brett and his crew paid to Tyler intensified. In the hallway, Trent accidentally spilled his energy drink on Tyler's backpack, ruining his English homework. In the locker room, Derek spread rumors that Tyler had gotten caught looking at other guys in the shower, forcing Tyler to endure days of slurs and suspicious looks. Ashley cornered him once near the library, her voice low and venomous. "You think you're clever," she said. "Getting close to Emma." Brett sees right through it. "You're just trying to get under his skin, and it's pathetic." "I'm not trying to do anything," Tyler said. "Emma and I are friends." "Friends?" Ashley laughed without humor. "Right. Keep telling yourself that. But here's what's going to happen. You're going to back off. You're going to stop hanging around her. Because if you don't, things are going to get a lot worse for you. And trust me, they can get so much worse." She walked away before Tyler could respond. He stood there, hands trembling with suppressed anger, aware that she was probably right. Things could always get worse, but he didn't back off. Couldn't. Emma had become something precious, a reminder that there was more to life than survival, more to him than just the scared kid trying to stay invisible. So he kept meeting her in the library, kept passing notes in chemistry, kept allowing himself to hope. Valentine's Day approached. The school hallways became a riot of pink and red, construction paper hearts with cheesy messages, the student council selling flowers and candygrams. Tyler watched it all with a mixture of longing and dread. He wanted to do something for Emma, wanted to show her what she'd come to mean to him, but he also knew that any public gesture would paint a target on both their backs that Brett wouldn't ignore. Still, he found himself in the mall 3 days before Valentine's Day, searching through stores for something perfect. He'd saved money from the part-time job he worked on weekends at a local hardware store, money his mother didn't know about because she'd just tried to put it toward bills. He wanted something meaningful, but not overwhelming. Something that said, "I see you," without saying too much. He found it in a small bookstore tucked between the food court and the multiplex. A first edition of The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin, Emma's favorite book. She'd mentioned it during one of their library sessions, how she'd read it a dozen times, how the copy she had was falling apart. This edition was beautiful, the cover pristine, the pages crisp. It cost almost everything Tyler had saved, but he didn't hesitate. He had the bookstore wrap it in simple brown paper, tied with twine. Inside, he wrote a note on a card. "For all the times you've made me visible, thank you. Tyler." He planned to give it to her on Valentine's Day, maybe in the library where they'd be alone, where he could see her reaction without the entire school watching. But life at Riverside Valley had taught him that plans meant nothing. It was the day before Valentine's Day, a Wednesday afternoon. Tyler had the gift in his backpack, wrapped and ready. He was at his locker trading books for the last period of the day when he felt the presence behind him. He turned to find all 5 of them, Brett, Cody, Trent, Derek, and Ashley. They formed a semicircle, blocking him in. "Heard you got Emma a Valentine's gift," Brett said. His voice was casual, but his eyes were cold. "That's cute. Really cute." Tyler's hand tightened on his backpack strap. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie," Ashley said. "Everyone knows you were at the bookstore." "Jenny Marks saw you. She told Rachel, who told me. A first edition Le Guin book. Very romantic." Tyler's mind raced. The hallway was crowded, but no one was helping. They never did. Mr. Hendricks walked by again, glanced over, saw nothing worth intervening in. The social contract held. Teachers didn't interfere unless blood was drawn or voices were raised. Everything else was just kids being kids. "Give it here," Brett said, extending his hand. "No!" The word came out before Tyler could stop it. Brett's smile widened. "No? That's interesting. You're telling me no." "It's not yours," Tyler said. His voice was steady, despite the fear thrumming through every nerve. "It's for Emma." "Exactly," Brett said. "And that's the problem. See, Emma is going to the Valentine's dance with me. I asked her this morning. She said yes. So anything you got for her, any sad little gift from her sad little friend, that's not needed, not wanted. Give it here." The words hit Tyler like a physical blow. Emma was going to the dance with Brett. She'd said yes. After everything, after the library sessions and the notes and the shared laughs, she'd still said yes to Brett Holloway. Tyler's grip on his backpack tightened until his knuckles went white. "No," he said again. Cody moved first, faster than someone his size should be able to move. He grabbed the backpack, yanked it off Tyler's shoulder. Tyler tried to hold on, but Trent was there too, pulling from the other side. The backpack ripped from Tyler's grasp. Derek unzipped it, started digging through it, tossing textbooks and notebooks to the floor. "Stop!" Tyler said, but his voice was lost in the noise of the hallway, in the laughter from Brett's crew, in the general hum of students pretending not to notice. Derek found the wrapped package, held it up triumphantly. "Got it. Excellent." Brett took the package, shook it slightly. "Let's see what we've got here." "Don't," Tyler said. He stepped forward, reaching for the package, but Cody's hand landed on his chest, shoving him back against the lockers hard enough to make his vision blur for a moment. Brett tore open the paper. The beautiful wrapping Tyler had paid extra for shredded in seconds. The book fell into Brett's hands, and he examined it with theatrical interest. "The Left Hand of Darkness," he read. "First edition. Probably cost you, what, $200? 3. He looked at Tyler. "That's a lot of money for someone who wears the same jacket every day." Tyler lunged forward. He didn't think, didn't plan, just reacted. His father's training kicked in instinctively. He moved to disable Cody first, the biggest threat, but he never got the chance. Derek tackled him from the side, and then all three of them were on him. Not hitting, nothing that would leave obvious marks, just controlling him, holding him against the lockers, while Brett stood just out of reach. "You know what?" Brett said, still holding the book. "I think I'll give this to Emma myself. Tell her it's from me. She'll love it. She'll think I'm so thoughtful." "You can't," Tyler gasped, struggling against the hands pinning him. "She'll know, I'll tell her." "Tell her what?" Ashley said. She'd pulled out her phone, was recording video. "That you got violent? That you attacked Brett over nothing? That you're unstable?" She moved the phone, capturing Tyler pinned against the lockers, face red, clearly struggling. "This video tells a different story than the one you'll tell." And Brett moved closer, lowered his voice so only Tyler could hear. "This is what happens when you forget your place, Brennan. This is what happens when you go after something that doesn't belong to you." He stepped back, pocketed the book. "Let him go." They released Tyler, who stumbled forward, nearly falling. His backpack lay on the floor, contents scattered. The torn, brown wrapping paper looked like shed skin. Brett and his crew walked away laughing, and the hallway traffic resumed as if nothing had happened. Tyler sank to his knees, gathering his books with shaking hands. A few people helped kick his things closer, but no one spoke to him. No one asked if he was okay. He felt hollowed out, scraped raw. The gift he'd spent weeks planning, the gesture he'd hoped would show Emma what she meant to him, was gone, stolen, and there was nothing he could do about it. He didn't go to his last class. Instead, he walked out of the school, through the parking lot, past the buses, just walking with no destination in mind. He ended up at a park a mile from campus, sitting on a swing set meant for children, staring at the ground. His phone buzzed. A text from Emma. "Where are you? You okay?" Tyler didn't respond. How could he explain? How could he tell her that her Valentine's gift was now in Brett's possession, that Brett was going to claim it as his own, that she'd probably believe him because why would Emma ever think Tyler could afford something so expensive? The sun set. The temperature dropped. Tyler finally stood, walked to the bus stop, rode home in silence. When he got to the apartment, his mother was there for once, having traded shifts with a co-worker. She took one look at Tyler's face and knew something was catastrophically wrong. "What happened?" she asked. Tyler wanted to tell her everything, wanted to break his promise, wanted to admit that he'd been lying about school being fine, that every day was a battle he was losing. But when he opened his mouth, what came out was, "Just a bad day. I'm okay." She didn't believe him. He could see it in her eyes. But she also knew better than to push, knew her son well enough to recognize when pushing would only make him retreat further. Instead, she made him dinner, pasta, and a salad, and they ate in silence while the television played a sitcom neither of them watched. That night, Tyler lay in bed and made a decision. He couldn't keep living like this. Couldn't keep absorbing the humiliation, couldn't keep letting them take from him. His father's voice echoed in his mind, words from one of those notebooks. "There comes a moment when patience becomes cowardice. You'll know it when it arrives. The question is what you'll do about it. Tyler got up, pulled the training bag from his closet, and started reading. Really reading, not just skimming for comfort. He read about technique and strategy, about mental preparation and physical conditioning. He read his father's thoughts on when to fight and when to walk away, about the difference between violence and self-defense, about how true strength was measured not in dominance but in control. He read until dawn broke, until he heard his mother's alarm go off, until he knew exactly what he needed to do. The next day was Valentine's Day. Riverside Valley had transformed into a shrine to teenage romance. Red and pink everywhere, students carrying flowers and stuffed animals, the hallways smelling like chocolate and desperation. Tyler arrived early, before most students, and went directly to the library. Mrs. Patterson, the librarian, looked up in surprise. "Tyler, you're here early. Is Mr. Kowalski around?" Tyler asked. Mrs. Patterson's expression shifted to understanding. Vincent Kowalski was the school's custodian, a quiet man in his 60s who'd worked at Riverside Valley for 30 years. Most students barely noticed him, but Tyler had. There was something about the way Mr. Kowalski moved, precise and economical, that reminded Tyler of his father. One day a few weeks ago, Tyler had seen Mr. Kowalski break up a fight between two students with minimal effort, controlling both of them without hurting either, his movements flowing like water. Afterward, Tyler had noticed the small tattoo on Mr. Kowalski's forearm, the Marine Corps emblem. "He's usually in the boiler room this time of morning," Mrs. Patterson said. "Everything okay?" "Yes, ma'am," Tyler said. "Thank you." The boiler room was in the basement of the main building, down a staircase most students never used. Tyler found Mr. Kowalski there, doing maintenance on one of the industrial heaters. He looked up when Tyler entered, his weathered face neutral. "Help you?" he asked. Tyler took a breath. "My father was Air Force, Special Operations. He taught me some things before he died. I saw you break up that fight last month. The way you moved, I recognized it." Mr. Kowalski's eyes sharpened. He set down his tools, gave Tyler his full attention. "That's so?" "I need help," Tyler said simply. "I need to remember what I knew. I need someone who understands." Mr. Kowalski studied him for a long moment, then he nodded once, decisive. "All right, meet me after school. Gym's open until 5 for equipment maintenance. No one will bother us." "Thank you," Tyler said. "Don't thank me yet," Mr. Kowalski replied. "You don't know what you're asking for." That day dragged. Tyler moved through classes in a fog of anticipation and dread. In chemistry, Emma tried to catch his eye, but he couldn't look at her, couldn't face what he'd lost. At lunch, he skipped the cafeteria entirely, sat alone in the library, eating a protein bar from his backpack. Ashley found him there, a smug smile on her face. "Emma loved the book," she said. "Brett gave it to her this morning. She actually got teary, said it was the most thoughtful gift anyone had ever given her. Isn't that sweet?" Tyler said nothing, just stared at her until she got uncomfortable and left. Inside, something cold and hard was forming, a core of determination his father would have recognized. After the final bell, Tyler didn't go to his locker. He went straight to the gymnasium. Mr. Kowalski was already there, changed from his custodian uniform into plain sweatpants and a Marines t-shirt that had seen better days. The basketball hoops were raised, the floor space clear and echoing. "Show me what you know," Mr. Kowalski said. Tyler started with the basics: stances, blocks, strikes. His form was rusty, his technique sloppy from months of disuse. Mr. Kowalski watched in silence, occasionally correcting Tyler's posture or foot placement. After 30 minutes, he called a halt. "You were trained well," Mr. Kowalski said, "but you're fighting yourself. Every movement has hesitation in it. Why? I promised my mom I wouldn't fight, Tyler said. There's a difference between fighting and defending yourself, between aggression and protection. Mr. Kowalski crossed his arms. You've been taking abuse. I've seen it. Wondered when you'd have enough. How do you know? I've been cleaning these hallways for 30 years. I see everything that matters. The question is, what are you going to do about it? Tyler met his eyes. I don't know yet, but I need to be ready for when I figure it out. Mr. Kowalski nodded. Then let's get to work. They trained for 2 hours. Mr. Kowalski pushed Tyler hard, reawakening muscles and reflexes that had lain dormant. He taught Tyler breathing techniques to control adrenaline, footwork drills to maintain balance, and simple defensive combinations that could stop an attacker without causing serious harm. Your father taught you a weapon, Mr. Kowalski said as they finished, but you've been afraid to use it. Fear is good, keeps you from becoming like the people who hurt you, but fear that paralyzes is just another kind of prison. Tyler showered in the locker room, his muscles pleasantly sore, his mind clearer than it had been in months. When he emerged, Emma was waiting in the hallway outside. His stomach dropped. "Hey," she said. Her voice was tentative. "You've been avoiding me." "No," Tyler lied. "Tyler." She stepped closer. "What happened? Yesterday you just disappeared. Today you won't even look at me in chemistry. Did I do something wrong?" He wanted to tell her about the book, about Brett stealing it, about everything. But what would be the point? She'd said yes to Brett. She was going to the Valentine's dance with him. Whatever Tyler had thought was developing between them had been fantasy, wishful thinking from a lonely kid who should have known better. "No," he said. "You didn't do anything wrong." "I've just been busy." Emma's expression fell. Busy. Right. She paused, seemed to gather herself. "Brett gave me this book today, first edition Le Guin. It's amazing, and he said all this stuff about how he remembered me mentioning it. But Tyler, I never told Brett about that book. I told you, only you." Tyler's heart stopped. He looked at Emma, saw the suspicion and hurt in her eyes, saw that she'd already put the pieces together. "Did you get me that book?" she asked quietly. There was no point in lying. "Yeah," he said, "I did. And Brett took it." It wasn't a question. "It doesn't matter," Tyler said. "You're going to the dance with him anyway." "Because he cornered me in the hallway and asked in front of 20 people, Emma said, her voice rising. "Because saying no would have made it weird and awkward, and I just wanted to avoid drama. Tyler, I was going to ask if you wanted to go." The words hung in the air between them. Tyler stared at her, unable to process what he was hearing. Emma had wanted to go with him, not Brett. Him. "I'm sorry," Emma said, her eyes shining. "I didn't know about the book. I didn't know what he'd done. If I had, I never would have accepted, never would have thanked him, never would have—" She stopped, wiped her eyes angrily. "I'm going to tell everyone what he did." "Don't," Tyler said quickly. "It'll just make things worse." "Worse?" Emma's laugh was bitter. "Tyler, how much worse can it get? They stole from you, they humiliated you, and you're just going to let them." Tyler didn't have an answer. Emma shook her head, started to walk away, then turned back. "For what it's worth," she said, "that book, knowing you picked it out, knowing you were thinking of me, it means more than anything Brett could ever do. Thank you." She left before he could respond. Tyler stood alone in the empty hallway, the gym's lights flickering overhead, feeling like he'd been turned inside out. Emma had wanted to go to the dance with him. The thought was exhilarating and devastating in equal measure. That evening, Tyler didn't go home. Instead, he took the bus to a different park, one with workout equipment, and ran through everything Mr. Kowalski had taught him. Over and over until his clothes were soaked with sweat, until the movements felt natural again, until his father's voice and Mr. Kowalski's instructions merged into one clear directive: be ready. The next day, Friday, the school was abuzz with Valentine's dance preparations. The event was scheduled for Saturday evening, and the hallways were filled with discussion about outfits and after-parties and who was going with whom. Tyler arrived to find his locker vandalized. Someone had spray-painted "loser" across it in dripping red letters. Around him, students stopped to stare, some laughing, some just observing the latest episode in Tyler's ongoing humiliation. Brett appeared as if summoned, his crew in tow. "Whoa, that's rough, Brennan. Some people are so immature, you know." His grin was wide and satisfied. "Hey, so I heard Emma figured out about the book. That was awkward for you, huh?" Tyler looked at the graffiti, then at Brett, and felt something shift inside him. The anger that had been building for months didn't explode. Instead, it crystallized, became focused and cold. "Yeah," Tyler said calmly. "Awkward." Brett seemed almost disappointed by the lack of reaction. "You should probably get that cleaned up before first period. Wouldn't want the teachers to think you did it yourself for attention." They walked away laughing. Tyler got cleaning supplies from Mr. Kowalski, spent 20 minutes scrubbing red paint off gunmetal grey, and made it to first period 5 minutes late. Mrs. Patterson gave him a pass without comment, her eyes sympathetic but helpless. After school, Tyler met Mr. Kowalski in the gym again. They trained hard, 3 hours this time. Mr. Kowalski taught Tyler about situational awareness, about reading an opponent's body language, about staying calm when chaos erupted around you. "A fight is decided before the first punch is thrown," Mr. Kowalski said. "If you're reactive, you've already lost. You have to be proactive. See it coming. Be 3 steps ahead." Tyler absorbed every word, every lesson. His body was remembering things his mind had tried to forget. The economy of motion his father had drilled into him, the way to generate power from the core, not the arms, the importance of breathing, of staying loose until the moment of contact. Saturday arrived. The Valentine's dance was scheduled for 7 o'clock. Tyler had no intention of going. Instead, he spent the afternoon at home, reading his father's notebooks, visualizing scenarios, preparing himself mentally for whatever came next. He knew, with a certainty that felt almost prophetic, that the situation with Brett was approaching its breaking point. At 6:30, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "If you care about Emma at all, come to the dance. Rachel." Tyler stared at the message, his instincts screaming warning. This was a trap, had to be. But the mention of Emma made the decision for him. He changed into the one decent outfit he owned, dark jeans and a button-down shirt his mother had bought him for Christmas, and headed to the school. Riverside Valley's gymnasium had been transformed. Paper streamers and Christmas lights created a canopy overhead. A DJ booth was set up on the stage, bass thumping through speakers that made the walls vibrate. Students filled the space, dancing and talking and taking selfies. Tyler entered through the side door, scanning the crowd for Emma. He found her near the refreshment table, looking miserable despite wearing a beautiful dark red dress. Brett was next to her, hand on her waist, laughing with Cody about something. Emma's expression made it clear she didn't want to be there, but Brett either didn't notice or didn't care. Tyler started toward them, weaving through the crowd. That's when he saw Rachel waving at him frantically from the bleachers. He changed direction, climbed up to where she sat. "Thank God you came," Rachel said. "Listen, Brett has been drinking. He snuck in a flask, and he's being super aggressive with Emma. She wants to leave, but he won't let her." "Where did he get alcohol? Does it matter?" "Tyler, she's uncomfortable and he's not listening to her, and I don't know what to do." Tyler looked back at the refreshment table. Brett was leaning in close to Emma now, his mouth near her ear. Emma was trying to step back, but his hand on her waist tightened, holding her in place. Tyler saw her expression shift from uncomfortable to scared, and something inside him snapped clean through. He descended the bleachers and crossed the dance floor with purpose. Students moved out of his way, sensing something different in his demeanor. Brett saw him coming and smiled, alcohol bright and mean. "Look who showed up," Brett announced loud enough for nearby students to hear. Brennan came to the dance. Solo, of course. "Couldn't get a date, buddy?" "Emma," Tyler said, ignoring Brett entirely, speaking directly to her. "Do you want to be here?" "She's fine," Brett said. "We're having a great time." "Aren't we, Em?" "I want to leave," Emma said quietly but clearly. "See, the thing is," Brett said, his smile hardening, "she's here with me. My date. So maybe you should mind your own business." Tyler met Brett's eyes. "She said she wants to leave. And I said she's fine." Brett's hand moved from Emma's waist to her arm, fingers digging in enough to make her wince. "Why don't you take off, Brennan, before you embarrass yourself more than you already have?" The DJ switched to a slower song. Couples moved together on the dance floor. Tyler took a step closer, close enough to smell the alcohol on Brett's breath, close enough to see the pupils dilated with drink and aggression. "Let her go," Tyler said. His voice was soft, but carried an edge that made several nearby students stop and pay attention. "Or what?" Brett released Emma, turned to face Tyler fully. Cody and Trent materialized on either side of him. Derek and Ashley were suddenly there too, forming a wall. "You going to make me?" Tyler looked at Emma. She was rubbing her arm where Brett had gripped it, her eyes wide. "Go find Rachel," he told her. "Wait outside." "Tyler," she started. "Please," he said, and something in his voice made her nod and hurry away. Brett laughed. "Oh, this is good. This is really good. You think you're her hero? Her knight in shining armor? You're nothing, Brennan. You've always been nothing." A crowd was forming now, students sensing drama, phones coming out to record. The DJ, unaware, kept the music going. Tyler was aware of all of it. The circle of witnesses, the cameras, the way Cody was cracking his knuckles, the way Trent had positioned himself to Tyler's left. He processed it all through the lens of his father's training, through the past week of work with Mr. Kowalski. "You stole from me," Tyler said. The words were calm, factual. "You've spent months making my life miserable. You've humiliated me, hurt me, taken things that weren't yours. And I let you because I promised someone I wouldn't fight." He paused, let the silence stretch. "But I didn't promise I wouldn't defend myself." Brett moved first, a wild haymaker telegraphed by his shoulder. Tyler sidestepped smoothly, the punch passing through empty air where his head had been. Cody came next, a tackle meant to drive Tyler to the ground. Tyler pivoted, used Cody's momentum against him, and the bigger boy stumbled past, crashing into a table of refreshments. Cups and plates exploded across the floor. Trent was faster, his fist connecting with Tyler's ribs. Tyler absorbed the impact, felt the spike of pain, and responded with a palm strike to Trent's solar plexus that dropped him to his knees, gasping for air. The crowd was screaming now, the DJ cutting the music, the gym filling with shouted reactions. Derek grabbed Tyler from behind, strong arms wrapping around his chest. Tyler dropped his weight, felt Derek's balance shift, and reversed the hold, slipping free and leaving Derek grasping air. A teacher was yelling something about stopping, about everyone stopping immediately, but it was too late for that. Brett came at Tyler again, this time with more control, a combination of punches that showed he'd done some boxing. Tyler blocked, deflected, stayed in constant motion the way his father had taught him. Never be where your opponent expects. Never meet force with force. Use angles, use speed, use their energy against them. Brett's fist grazed Tyler's cheek. Tyler responded with a leg sweep that put Brett on his back. Cody had recovered, was charging again like an enraged bull. Tyler waited until the last possible moment, then dropped and rolled, and Cody's momentum carried him into the wall, the impact audible even over the chaos. Trent was back up, coming at Tyler with a wild charge. Tyler sidestepped, caught Trent's arm, and used a basic joint lock to redirect him face first into the bleachers. Derek was the smart one. He didn't charge. He circled, looking for an opening. Tyler kept his center, kept his breathing steady, aware of Derek's position without staring at him directly. When Derek finally moved, it was a grab for Tyler's throat. Tyler blocked, redirected, and delivered a controlled strike to Derek's temple that was just hard enough to stun him, to make him sit down hard on the gym floor, confused but unhurt. Ashley was screaming at Brett to get up, to hurt Tyler, to do something. Brett struggled to his feet, his face red with humiliation and rage. The crowd had grown. What looked like half the school pressed in close, recording everything, shouting reactions. Teachers were pushing through, trying to reach the center of the chaos. Brett lunged one more time, all technique abandoned, just fury and embarrassment driving him forward. Tyler caught his arm, turned his body, and used a textbook hip throw that sent Brett crashing to the gymnasium floor. Tyler landed on top of him, knee on Brett's chest, hand controlling Brett's right arm, perfectly positioned to deliver devastating follow-up strikes. But he didn't. He froze there, breathing hard, looking down at Brett's shocked face, at the fear finally visible beneath the bravado. The crowd had gone silent. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what Tyler would do. Tyler stood up, released Brett, stepped back. His hands were shaking, adrenaline coursing through his system. Brett lay on the floor, staring up at him in disbelief. "I could have hurt you," Tyler said quietly. "All of you. But I didn't. That's the difference between you and me." He looked around at the crowd, at the dozens of phones recording, at the teachers finally arriving to take control. You think strength is about dominating people, humiliating them, taking what you want because you can. But real strength is control, knowing when to fight and when to walk away, knowing when to stop. He turned to leave, every eye in the gymnasium following him. That's when he saw Mr. Kowalski standing near the entrance, arms crossed, his expression unreadable but his eyes approving. Next to him was Emma, her hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Tyler walked past them both, out of the gymnasium, into the cold February night. Behind him, chaos erupted again, voices overlapping, teachers taking charge, Brett shouting threats that rang hollow. Tyler kept walking, across the parking lot, toward the bus stop, his heart hammering, his mind replaying every moment of the confrontation. He'd done it. He'd stood up. He'd fought back. And he'd maintained control, even when every instinct screamed to make them hurt the way they'd hurt him. His father would have been proud. Tyler's phone buzzed incessantly as he waited for the bus. Text messages flooded in from numbers he didn't recognize, classmates he'd never spoken to suddenly wanting to comment, to congratulate, to insert themselves into his story. He ignored them all until one message stood out. "Emma. That was the bravest thing I've ever seen. Thank you, I'm so sorry you had to do that. Can we talk?" Tyler stared at the message for a long time. The bus pulled up, its brakes hissing, door opening with a pneumatic wheeze. Tyler climbed aboard, found a seat near the back and typed out a reply. "Tomorrow. Library noon." That night, Tyler barely slept. He kept replaying the fight, analyzing his choices, wondering if he'd crossed a line, if he'd become the thing he'd promised not to become. His mother came home from her shift and found him sitting at the kitchen table at 2 a.m, staring at nothing. "Tyler?" Her voice was gentle, concerned. "What happened?" And this time, he told her everything. The months of bullying, the stolen gift, the confrontation at the dance. He watched her face cycle through shock, anger, guilt that she hadn't known, hadn't noticed. When he finished, she was crying quietly, reaching across the table to take his hands. "Your father would be proud of you," she said. "Not because you fought, but because you showed restraint. Because you protected someone who needed protecting." because you finally stood up for yourself. She squeezed his hands. I'm proud of you too. And I'm sorry I made you promise not to fight. I was scared of losing you the way I lost him, but I forgot that you're his son in all the ways that matter. What happens now? Tyler asked. Now you face the consequences, she said. The school will probably suspend you, but we'll deal with it together. No more secrets. No more carrying everything alone. Okay? Okay, Tyler said. Sunday morning, Tyler's phone exploded with notifications. Someone had uploaded video of the fight to social media, and it had gone viral within the school's social circle. Tyler's name was everywhere. The comments ranged from supportive to shocked to critical, but the overwhelming consensus was that Brett and his crew had gotten exactly what they deserved. There were calls for Tyler's expulsion, mostly from Brett's friends, but far more people were celebrating what they called Tyler's epic takedown of the biggest jerks in school. Tyler ignored most of it. At noon, he went to the library. Emma was already there, sitting at their usual table, looking exhausted. When she saw Tyler, she stood up quickly, and for a moment, they just looked at each other across the space between tables. Then Emma closed the distance and hugged him. Tyler froze, unprepared, but then his arms came up and he held her, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling the solid reality of her gratitude and presence. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder. "I was so scared, and then you were there, and you were so calm, so controlled." "Tyler, where did you learn to do that?" They sat down, and Tyler told her about his father, about the years of training, about the promise he'd made and why he'd broken it. Emma listened without interrupting, her dark eyes never leaving his face. "I'm so sorry about the book," she said when he finished. "I gave it back to Brett this morning, told him I never wanted to speak to him again. He tried to say you attacked him, that you went crazy, but there's video, Tyler. Everyone saw what really happened. They saw him swing first. They saw you just defending yourself." "What about you?" Tyler asked. "Are you okay?" "He grabbed you pretty hard." Emma rubbed her arm unconsciously. "Just a bruise. Nothing serious. Rachel took me home right after, and I spent the whole night telling my parents what happened. They're furious. They want to press charges against Brett for assault." "That'll make things worse," Tyler said. "Maybe," Emma admitted, "but my dad says sometimes things need to get worse before they get better." He's planning to call the school tomorrow, demand a full investigation. She paused, reached across the table to take Tyler's hand. "None of this is your fault. You know that, right? They pushed and pushed until you had no choice." "I always had a choice," Tyler said. "I chose to finally push back." They sat in silence for a moment, hands linked across the library table. Then Emma said, "The dance was supposed to be our night." "Well, yours and mine. We got robbed of that." She smiled, a little shy. "Want to do something now? Just hang out? No drama? No crowds? Just us?" Tyler smiled back, the first genuine smile he'd managed in days. "Yeah, I'd like that." They spent the afternoon together, walking through the park, getting coffee at a small cafe Emma knew, talking about everything and nothing. It felt like a glimpse of what life could be without the constant weight of fear and vigilance. As the sun set and they sat on a bench watching the sky turn orange and pink, Emma leaned her head on Tyler's shoulder. "You're different now," she said. "I can feel it. You're still you, but there's something else there. Something stronger." "I remembered who I was," Tyler said, "before I got scared. Before I let them make me small." "You were never small," Emma said firmly. "They just couldn't see you properly. But I do. I always have." Monday morning arrived with a summons to Principal Anderson's office. Tyler and his mother went together, sitting in uncomfortable chairs across from the principal's large desk. Mr. Anderson was a tired-looking man in his 50s, balding with the expression of someone who dealt with too many fights and not enough solutions. "Tyler," he began, I've reviewed the videos from Saturday night. Multiple students recorded the incident, so we have comprehensive footage. He paused, steepled his fingers. What you did was dangerous and violated school policy on physical altercations. However, he emphasized the word. The footage clearly shows that Brett Holloway struck first, that Cody Marsh initiated physical contact, that you were, by any reasonable definition, defending yourself. Tyler's mother squeezed his hand under the desk. That said, Mr. Anderson continued, we cannot have students taking martial law into their own hands. Tyler, you're suspended for 3 days. Brett and his friends are suspended for 2 weeks and will face additional disciplinary measures. The Holloways have threatened legal action, but our lawyers are confident the video evidence will make that difficult for them. He looked at Tyler seriously. I'm also told by several staff members that you've been experiencing bullying for months and never reported it. Why? Tyler met his gaze. Would it have mattered? Would you have done anything? The question hung in the air, uncomfortable and true. Mr. Anderson had the grace to look ashamed. Probably not enough, he admitted. We've failed you, Tyler. That ends now. I'm implementing a zero-tolerance policy for bullying starting today. Students can report incidents anonymously. We're adding counselors. We're doing better. He handed Tyler a pamphlet. I'd also like you to consider talking to our counselor about everything you've experienced. Trauma doesn't just disappear. Tyler took the pamphlet, nodded. The meeting ended with handshakes and promises. As they left the building, his mother put her arm around his shoulders. 3 days off school, she said. What are you going to do with yourself? Train, Tyler said. Mr. Kowalski said he'd work with me in the mornings, and I need to catch up on homework, and he paused. Maybe I'll finally text Emma without overthinking every word. His mother laughed, the first real laugh Tyler had heard from her in months. That sounds like a very good plan. The 3 days of suspension passed quietly. Tyler trained with Mr. Kowalski every morning, the older Marine pushing him harder, teaching him not just technique, but philosophy. Violence should always be a last resort, Mr. Kowalski said. But when it becomes necessary, you execute with precision and control. What you did Saturday was textbook. You defended yourself, protected someone who needed protection, and stopped the moment the threat was neutralized. Your father taught you well. Tyler spent afternoons doing homework and texting with Emma. They talked about everything: music, movies, fears, dreams, the way the world looked different when you stopped being afraid. She sent him photos she'd taken around town, images that found beauty in ordinary things. He sent her quotes from his father's notebooks, words of wisdom that felt important to share. When Tyler returned to school on Thursday, he walked through the front doors expecting hostility, expecting more confrontation. Instead, he found something unexpected: respect. Students he'd never spoken to nodded at him in hallways. People made room for him in the cafeteria. Several kids came up to thank him, sharing their own stories of being bullied by Brett's crew, expressing relief that someone had finally stood up to them. Not everyone was supportive. Some of Brett's friends glared at Tyler, muttered threats that never materialized into action. But the general atmosphere had shifted. The social hierarchy that had seemed immutable was suddenly flexible, uncertain. Brett returned from suspension 2 weeks later, diminished somehow, his crew scattered. Cody switched to different lunch period. Trent and Derek kept their distance. Ashley transferred to a different school, her family quietly relocating to avoid the scandal. Brett himself tried to rebuild his reputation, tried to spin the narrative that Tyler had attacked him unprovoked, that the videos were misleading. But too many people had seen, too many had recorded, too many knew the truth. By March, Brett was just another student, no longer royalty, no longer untouchable. Emma and Tyler became inseparable. They studied together, ate lunch together, went to movies and concerts, and spent long evenings just talking. Tyler met her parents, who thanked him earnestly for protecting their daughter and treated him like family. Emma met Tyler's mother, who saw immediately why her son smiled more, laughed more, seemed lighter. The Valentine's book incident became school legend. Someone eventually found the first edition Le Guin in Brett's locker and returned it to Tyler. He gave it to Emma on her birthday in April, properly this time, with no theft or drama. She cried when she unwrapped it, kissed him in front of their friends, and told him it was the best gift anyone had ever given her. Tyler continued training with Mr. Kowalski through the spring. The old Marine became a mentor in the truest sense, not just teaching fighting technique but life philosophy. They talked about Tyler's father, about loss and grief, and how to honor someone's memory by living according to their values. Mr. Kowalski shared his own stories, his own struggles with violence and control, the lessons learned through decades of hard experience. "Your father gave you a gift," Mr. Kowalski said one afternoon as they finished a training session. "Not the ability to fight, though that's part of it. The real gift was the discipline to know when to fight and when to walk away. That's wisdom most people never learn. You learned it young, lost it for a while, and found it again when it mattered most." Spring turned to early summer. Finals approached, bringing with them the promise of summer vacation and the relief of having survived the school year. On the last day of classes, Tyler stood at his locker. The same locker that had been vandalized months earlier, now just another piece of metal in a long hallway. Emma appeared at his shoulder, slipping her hand into his. "Ready for summer?" she asked. "More than ready," Tyler said. He closed his locker, looked around at the hallway that had once been a battlefield, now just a hallway. "You know what's weird? This place doesn't scare me anymore." "Good," Emma said. "It never should have." She tugged his hand. "Come on. Rachel's throwing a party to celebrate surviving sophomore year. Everyone's going. Well, everyone that matters." They walked out of Riverside Valley together, into the bright June sunlight, leaving behind the person Tyler had been when he first arrived. The quiet, scared kid who'd tried to make himself invisible was gone. In his place was someone stronger, not because he could fight, but because he'd learned the difference between strength and cruelty, between defending yourself and seeking revenge, between being a victim and being a survivor. That night, at Rachel's party, surrounded by friends and laughter and the promise of summer, Tyler found himself thinking about his father, about the lessons passed down through sweat and patience in a Montana garage, about promises made and broken and remade in better forms, about the fact that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is stand up for yourself, and sometimes the strongest thing you can do is show mercy. Emma squeezed his hand, pulled him toward the music. Tyler went willingly, letting himself be happy, letting himself belong, letting himself finally believe that he'd survived the worst and come out better for it. The road ahead would have its challenges, its obstacles, its moments of doubt, but he'd face them as himself, complete and unafraid, carrying his father's wisdom and his own hard-won experience. In the end, the story wasn't about revenge or domination. It was about transformation, about a boy who lost himself and found something better in the process, about standing up not just for yourself, but for the person you want to become, about learning that true strength lies not in the ability to hurt others, but in the restraint to stop yourself, even when every instinct screams otherwise. The music played. Tyler danced with Emma under the stars, and somewhere, in the space between past and future, in the lessons learned and the person he'd become, Tyler felt his father's presence, proud and permanent, a foundation that would never crumble no matter what storms came next. The summer stretched ahead, golden and full of possibility. Tyler Brennan, who'd arrived at Riverside Valley broken and afraid, who'd endured months of humiliation and pain, who'd finally stood up and discovered that he was stronger than anyone had believed, including himself, faced it with quiet confidence. He'd been tested by fire and emerged not as a victim or a bully, but as something better. Someone who understood that real courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the choice to face it with dignity, control, and compassion. And in that understanding, in that transformation, Tyler found something more valuable than any Valentine's gift, more powerful than any punch thrown or taken. He found himself, whole and unashamed, ready for whatever came next. The future was uncertain, but for the first time since his father's death, Tyler looked toward it not with dread, but with hope. Knowing that whatever challenges awaited, he had the strength to meet them, the wisdom to navigate them, and the people around him to remind him that he never had to face anything alone again. The story that began with humiliation and theft ended with redemption and growth, proving what Tyler's father had always known: that the measure of a person isn't found in their darkest moments, but in how they choose to rise from them, not with bitterness or cruelty, but with grace, strength, and an unshakable commitment to being better than those who tried to break them. Tyler Brennan had learned that lesson the hard way, had lived it in every painful day at Riverside Valley, and had ultimately proven it in the gymnasium on a Valentine's night that changed everything. And that, more than any single act of defiance or moment of victory, was what made his story worth telling. Not the fight itself, but the journey to becoming someone worthy of fighting for.